undercover with investigators as many of the children were being exploited by human traffickers.
60 children were rescued in this 2-week operation that spanned Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco County.
ICE agents just shattered a multi-state web, arresting over 40 suspects in a series of synchronized dawn raids across 8 states. This wasn't a local case. It was a national pipeline run by traffickers who moved children across state lines with military-level precision and believed no one in law enforcement could stop them. In the last 90 days alone, connected operations across Texas, Michigan, Florida, and the Midwest uncovered hundreds of victims, dozens of shell companies, and encrypted dark web networks run by offenders hiding behind anonymity.
2-week multi-agency operation recovered a record number of children from dangerous situations right here in the Bay Area.
But none of that was the real shock, because when ICE agents dug into the digital files that mapped out this entire web, the routes, the schedules, the locations, they found something no one was prepared for. The s***ers were using law enforcement-grade intelligence to evade capture. So here's the question. How did traffickers get access to law enforcement intelligence in the first place?
They betrayed the trust that the public placed in them, disgraced the badge.
And that betrayal is what triggered the raids and everything that followed. Now we go to where this operation actually began, with the first crack ICE noticed in a system that should have caught this years earlier. The entire operation started with a single anomaly, something so small most agencies would have missed it. ICE didn't. A $127,000 Bitcoin transfer hit a dissolved LLC in Nevada. On paper, the company hadn't existed in years, but the transaction metadata made one impossible mistake. It exposed a physical IP address in Detroit tied to a warehouse that didn't appear on any commercial registry. When ICE analysts zoomed in, they found something even stranger. The building was officially listed as vacant since 2019, yet it was pulling more electricity than a hospital. Surveillance teams moved in immediately. For 11 nights, undercover ICE agents watched delivery trucks roll in only between 2 and 4 a.m., always with blacked-out windows, always staying exactly 40 minutes before disappearing. ICE recognized the pattern instantly, and that's when they caught their biggest break yet. On night 12, thermal imaging caught dozens of heat signatures moving inside in coordinated patterns. That caught their attention. Initially, they thought it was just staff, but that didn't sit right. There were too many people moving in coordination to be staff, too organized to be just noise, so ICE requested drone surveillance. The drone picked up a second anomaly. The power spikes they noticed earlier synced perfectly with the truck's arrival times. Someone was running servers inside the building, huge ones. When ICE finally moved in, the breach was quick and controlled.
It went down at 10:30 Thursday morning, as you see in this surveillance video. Watch as 2 SWAT team trucks and a line of undercover cars sweep into a warehouse facility.
But the most important discovery came next. Fragments of outbound data. Inside that data was a spreadsheet tracking 327 minors across 9 states. Names, ages, movement schedules. That's when they knew the scale of the mission they had accidentally stumbled on. It was clear they weren't just looking at a small-time ring. This was a national supply chain. And yet, something still didn't add up. How had a network this seemingly large avoided federal detection for years? ICE didn't have the answer yet, but someone on the inside knew they were coming. When ICE analysts dug deeper into the data coming out of the Detroit warehouse, they found a folder that should not have existed outside a federal database. It was labeled Authorized Access. Inside were patrol maps, duty rosters, shift change schedules, federal inspection calendars. Ask yourself, was the leak coming from incompetence or corruption? Turns out, it was corruption. Someone with high-level clearance was feeding this network information. Someone employed by the Biden administration who didn't prioritize the safety of the people they were meant to protect. The first suspect, a DHS contractor with back-end access to enforcement databases. The second, a retired state trooper with a history of disciplinary issues, now suddenly linked to encrypted communications tied to the warehouse servers. ICE confirmed the traffickers weren't guessing when to move. They were working around actual patrol gaps, down to the hour. This wasn't a failure of the system. This was someone inside the system choosing to protect the criminals. Even veteran agents were stunned. One internal report stated that a detailed background check would have revealed the agent's allegiance. The discovery changed everything. It meant the traditional enforcement playbook was compromised. ICE didn't know who they could trust. They couldn't risk alerts, couldn't rely on shared systems. The entire mission went dark. It was the only way not to alert the network before law enforcement had the chance to bust them. But ICE analysts didn't stop at the intel files. They dug deeper into the packets of encrypted data leaving the warehouse, looking for whatever else the traffickers were trying so hard to hide.
Agents use cutting-edge techniques to examine digital evidence, which in many cases uncovers information that helps solve criminal cases.
What they found were routing signatures that didn't match anything local. These didn't look like simple uploads. They were relays, bouncing through foreign servers before disappearing into hidden networks. One signature in particular stood out, a persistent handshake matching a dark web node that federal cyber units had been chasing for months. Analysts traced it backward, jumping through layers of encryption until multiple streams converged on the same endpoint. The Detroit warehouse wasn't the operation. It was feeding the operation. ICE had just uncovered the link between a physical trafficking hub and a digital infrastructure spanning multiple states, a system run by offenders who believed anonymity made them untouchable. When ICE cracked the encrypted traffic flowing out of the Detroit warehouse, the data pointed to something federal agencies had chased for years, a cluster of hidden servers sitting behind multiple layers of encryption, used to carry out acts that'll chill the bones of even the most seasoned detectives. Agencies knew these sites existed. They had taken down smaller ones, but never these, not until now. In the Detroit data, analysts found repeat login patterns from multiple states. But the worst part, they realized user activity spikes synced with the same transport windows ICE had just mapped in Detroit.
Agents say during investigations, they found incriminating information on drones, car systems, game consoles, and other devices that record data.
This wasn't a coincidence. It was a central command node. ICE immediately pushed the intel upstream. Within days, federal cyber units confirmed the Detroit hub was directly connected to 4 of the most active exploitation sites on the dark web.
The DOJ played a part in dismantling 4 different websites that shared images and videos containing abuse.
That discovery detonated the next phase of the mission. The DOJ formally launched Operation Grayskull, a direct response to the evidence ICE pulled from Detroit. The warehouse was feeding the dark web infrastructure with sinister content that offenders across the country relied on. Names emerged quickly. Thomas Katsampis from Minnesota was the first one to appear on ICE's radar. He was a moderator turned staff member, enforcing posting rules and training users on ways to evade capture from law enforcement. Next was Selwyn Rosenstein from Florida, who was linked to server management and encrypted communication channels. Within weeks, Grayskull resulted in 18 convictions, hundreds of years in combined sentencing, and the dismantling of 4 dark web platforms that had operated for years without interruption.
As a result of Operation Grayskull, the FBI arrested 19 subjects here in the United States, and working with our international partners, helped coordinate additional arrests in 7 more countries.
The results sparked outrage amongst top officials, unable to believe such horrific websites exist preying on the most innocent ones in American society. Acting Assistant Attorney General Matthew R. Gagliotti of the Justice Department's Criminal Division said this about it. Today's announcement sends a clear warning to those who exploit and obscene children. You will not find safe haven. Even on the dark web, these offenders thought that they could act without consequences. But they were wrong. Thanks to the relentless determination of our prosecutors and law enforcement partners, we have exposed these perpetrators for who they are, eliminated their websites, and brought justice to countless victims. But the mission wasn't over. Inside the server logs was something even more important than the offenders: financial trails, offshore accounts, payment ledgers, routing instructions. All of it pointed to a single coordinator, someone who understood logistics, transport, and digital laundering, someone who didn't appear anywhere physically, but whose fingerprints were all over the structure. Once Operation Grayskull went live, ICE analysts gained access to 2 things the network never expected to lose: its communication channels and its backup servers. Inside those servers were message threads referencing 3 coded locations that stood out to ICE. Not buildings, Zones marked with initials TX-N, TX-W, and TX-DFW. Those same corridor codes appeared in Detroit's spreadsheet, but the real confirmation came from a suspect ICE had already taken into custody during the Detroit surveillance raids, a warehouse manager from Toledo, arrested after fleeing one of the secondary sites ICE hit.
According to the DOJ, Robert Boyles pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography and conspiracy to distribute child pornography.
At first, he refused to talk. Then ICE confronted him with the dark web communications recovered from Grayskull, messages matching his exact transport windows. That broke him. During interrogation, he admitted that the network operated 3 active hubs, and that one of them, the biggest one, was in North Texas. He described scheduled delivery windows, standardized routes, and a transport process, all of which matched the cryptic codes ICE had traced from Detroit. His confession is what triggered the next surge. So while Grayskull teams were dismantling the dark web backbone, ICE rerouted a surge team of analysts and tactical units and cyber support into Texas, working alongside state partners under a single mission: hit every location tied to the corridor codes. A coordinated entry plan was drawn in under 12 hours. The plan was called Operation Soteria Shield.
It's the end of a month-long investigation by federal and local law enforcement of a crime that authorities say is a year-round problem.
Before dawn, ICE teams split across 3 primary locations tied to the corridor codes. They got to the first location. At the first site, a suburban makeshift warehouse listed under a fake consulting LLC. ICE agents used a hydraulic ram to force entry. Flashlights cut through a maze of temporary walls, the kind traffickers build to slow officers down. Within seconds, ICE secured the outside, then pushed their way inside where multiple laptops were still running, mid-communication.
Hands up! Get on the ground! Keep your hands up!
At the second site, a storage facility off a highway corridor, agents entered through a side roll-up door. Inside, they found rows of locked interior units, identical to Detroit's layout. Teams cleared each one in rapid succession, documenting evidence and securing anyone inside.
People behind bars this morning. This was after a major bust in a storage unit in Phoenix.
At the third location, the office front, ICE agents swept through in under a minute. The building was empty of furniture, but full of tech, phones, prepaid SIM cards, routers, drives, and coded documents tied to transport schedules. Minutes later, all primary structures were secured. Recovery teams were inside. Digital forensics teams immediately started cloning devices, pulling drives, and isolating servers to stop any remote wipe attempts.
Authorities are calling it a successful roundup of alleged offenders.
Only after every room, every device, and every person was accounted for did ICE command authorize the press to be alerted that an operation had taken place. By the time the numbers came in, no one could believe it. 109 recovered, 244 suspects arrested, 1,130 devices seized with over 213 terabytes of digital evidence.
The operation not only led to arrests and rescues, but also to the seizure of terabytes of abuse material.
While that's good news, it sparked criticism of the Biden administration. You see, these were websites functioning during the Biden administration, yet nothing was done to save them until Trump took over. Dallas police worked closely with ICE on the raid. Here's what their police Chief Daniel C. Camo, said in a statement. Operation Soteria Shield was a massive team effort and a powerful reminder of what we can accomplish when we unite around one clear mission: protecting our kids and holding offenders accountable. But as the investigation continued, they soon discovered Texas was not a side operation. It was a core artery of the same organism, and nearly every ledger pointed back to one identity: the coordinator. Across Detroit's power logs, Grayskull's spreadsheets, and Texas's seized devices, one identifier kept appearing: not a name or a username, but a signature embedded in routing files and offshore ledgers, a figure known only by an internal code. He never appeared on surveillance, never used the same IP twice, never communicated without encryption.
Recently, he went by the name Boss. Not boss of a military unit, but boss of a dark web website devoted to abuse images.
According to the ledgers and comms ICE recovered, He created the routing codes used across all hubs. He set the safe windows, timed precisely around law enforcement patrol gaps. He managed dozens of shell companies to wash payments through offshore accounts. He coordinated the relay structure connecting physical hubs to dark web servers. He standardized the movement schedules the Toledo suspect admitted to using, and he was very successful at it.
The 4 dark web sites with child images drew 120,000 members plus.
The man, aka the boss, operated like a freight executive, except his cargo was human lives. The most disturbing part? He never used the same IP address twice, never appeared in a chat under the same handle, never gave an instruction without running it through multiple encrypted routes. To ICE, that meant one thing. They weren't just chasing a man, they were likely chasing an infrastructure built by someone who understood logistics at a professional level.
These are dark websites, difficult to access, difficult to find out about, and they have child images. And they drew 120,000 plus members. Millions of files.
The breakthrough came from a laptop seized in the Texas raids. Inside was a spreadsheet updated 48 hours earlier. It had 3 upcoming movements in 3 states: Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. And analysts realized something else. If these dates were part of the coordinator's timetable, then he also had a failsafe, a way to wipe the entire system if he detected a raid. ICE had one window, one shot, and the movements he scheduled next forced ICE to launch the most aggressive strike in years. At this point, there was only one plan left: hit every remaining hub at the exact same second. ICE teams spent 36 hours preparing. No outside notifications or shared channels. Everything internal and encrypted. At 2:18 a.m., the command center went dark again. Agents in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania staged silently outside their assigned targets. Each site had been confirmed through the combined intel of Detroit's thermal logs, Grayskull's dark web accounts, Toledo's confession, and Texas's server dumps. The agents received confirmation to move in on the mark. Several doors went down in 3 states.
We need the ram now!
Copy that, releasing the ram.
Smoke out! All units, clear the lane! Clear the lane!
In Michigan, ICE breached a duplex tied to 2 offshore shell companies. Inside, the last set of routing files matching the coordinator's dates. In Ohio, a warehouse office went dark seconds after the breach, an attempt to kill the power. But ICE had already isolated the breakers. In Pennsylvania, agents raided a rented commercial unit that had no legitimate leaseholder on record.
Rescue, 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 rescue.
Get down!
The whiteboards inside matched the coordinator's movement schedule perfectly. A few hours later, every target was secured. All suspects were in custody, and digital forensics teams had cloned devices and locked the entire network in place. The coordinator's failsafe never activated. He never saw it coming. 40 suspects, several states. One operation that dismantled a trafficking pipeline that had survived for 7 years. If this network needed a coordinator, an intel leak, encrypted overseas routing, law enforcement knowledge, and a dark web command center, how many more exist that we haven't found yet?
Un saludo, hermanos y hermanas, desde el monasterio de la luz de Nuestra Señora de Fátima. Hoy quería, traer un poco a reflexión, pues, lo que habéis visto, ¿no? Yo la verdad es que tanto tiempo, ¿no? Pues, acampando, ¿no? Lo que es la oscuridad, ¿no? En todo el planeta, ¿no? Dando rienda suelta, ¿no? A tantas cosas tan de muerte, ¿no? De destrucción, ¿no? De la criatura de Dios, ¿no? Es algo curioso, ¿no? Esto es una forma, yo creo más que nunca, ¿no? En estos últimos tiempos, ¿no? De darse cuenta, ¿no? De cómo los que han estado en el poder durante todo, desde el principio, ¿no? Pues han consentido, ¿no? Y han fomentado, ¿no? Que no haya leyes, ¿no? Que no haya justicia, ¿no? Contra los más indefensos, ¿no? Que son los niños, ¿no? Es algo que verdaderamente me sorprende, ¿no? Yo siempre he querido pensar, ¿no? Que cuando creamos los cuerpos de seguridad del Estado de los diferentes países a nivel mundial, pues estaban para salvar, ¿no? Y proteger, ¿no? Sobre todo a los niños, ¿no? Y tantas cosas, ¿no? Que han estado desprotegidas, ¿no? Por eso cuando ves este vídeo, ¿no? Y te das cuenta, ¿no? De todo, bueno, la operación, ¿no? En sí, ¿no? Yo la verdad, por mi situación, como todos sabéis, pues lo sé. En mi caso, muchas veces es más doloroso, porque a mí me llega, como dije en un vídeo anterior, vi a una niña, ¿no? que me estaba pidiendo ayuda, ¿no? Y la verdad es que es muy triste, ¿no? Todo esto, ¿no? Y para eso estamos aquí, ¿no? Para modificar todo esto. Tenemos que modificar todo, la legislación, ¿no? Todo tiene que ser rápido, efectivo, ¿no? Y seguir el dinero. Lo más importante en todo esto es seguir el dinero, ¿no? Hay que pensar ya, dejar de pensar, ¿no? Como hemos estado pensando, ¿no? En tiempos anteriores, ¿no? Con el tema de las bandas, ¿no? De cómo se organiza la oscuridad, ¿no? Para hacer daño, ¿no? A la criatura de Dios, ¿no? Que es lo que está haciendo, ¿no? Y sacar beneficio, ¿no? De esas formas, ¿no? Que es con todo lo que hacen, ¿no? Lo que tenemos que hacer es eso, ¿no? Empezar a modificar, a hacer algo nuevo totalmente, la verdad. Ya sabéis que la mejor manera de todo esto es seguir el dinero, ¿no? Y luego ya las redes ahora, actualmente, yo creo que siempre ha sido igual, ¿no? Han tenido gente infiltrada, ¿no? En los cuerpos de seguridad del Estado, porque la inteligencia, ¿de dónde va a venir si no? Para hacer tanto mal como hay, ¿no? O cómo es posible, ¿no? Que en el pleno siglo en el cual nos encontremos haya tanta droga, ¿no? Tanta distribución por todo el planeta. ¿Cómo es posible, ¿no? Que entre en los países, ¿no? Porque la pregunta que nos tenemos que hacer es ¿dónde se fabrica la droga? ¿Y de dónde viene? Entonces, con estas preguntas creo que es muy evidente darse cuenta, ¿no? De que dónde está, ¿no? Digamos, dónde están los responsables, ¿no? De todo esto, ¿no? Y nunca mejor dicho, están en los gobiernos. Son ellos los responsables. Si ellos no adecúan, digamos, las leyes de tal manera para restringir todo ello y hacen, digamos, unas leyes, ¿no? En las cuales pues sean efectivas, ¿no? Y no permitan, digamos, la entrada de este tipo de sustancia, ¿no? Que es más que muerte, ¿no? Porque creo que el daño que hace, ¿no? Por donde quieras que vayas, ¿no? Pues creo que es bastante evidente, ¿no? Y luego todo lo que hay, ¿no? Todo esto no puede ser de otra manera si no es consentido por los gobiernos. En este caso estamos hablando en Estados Unidos, pero que esto se repite, el patrón es el mismo en Europa y donde quiera que sea. Siempre el patrón es el mismo, ¿no? Por eso hay que empezar a plantearse, ¿no? Pues modificar esas leyes, ¿no? Y seguir el dinero, ¿no? Y pensar, ¿no? Que estas organizaciones criminales son empresas, no olvidéis. Disponen de mucho dinero porque están infiltradas digamos, en el tejido digamos, de los gobiernos, ¿no? Hay un submundo, que es una cosa que a mí me parece todavía tan increíble, ¿no? Que la gente no se dé cuenta del submundo, de la oscuridad, ¿no? Está lo que uno ve, lo que tú quieras ver ahora en tu entorno, ¿no? Pero luego dentro de tu entorno hay un submundo, ¿no? Que es donde se desenvuelve el mal, ¿no? Es donde da rienda suelta, ¿no? A todas sus depravaciones, ¿no? A todo lo que hay de pederastia, todo lo que hay de violaciones en directo y tantas cosas, ¿no? Tenemos que acabar con todos estos sitios que son de pornografía, ¿no? Que son todos esos sitios, hay que cerrarlos. Eso es destrucción, es muerte y es esclavitud. Eso es una cosa que me gustaría entender cómo en estos tiempos no se ha podido haber tanto como hay, ¿no? Y creo que las consecuencias de todo ello es porque se ha permitido. ¿Quién está reinando, ¿no? durante todo este tiempo, ¿no? ¿Quién ha sido el que ha permitido todas estas basuras? Porque es lo que son. La criatura de Dios no está para esto, está para cosas más grandes, ¿no? Es una forma, ¿no? de desviarte de tu camino, ¿no? Para que no llegues, digamos, a lo más importante, que es la iluminación, ¿no? Y para llegar a la iluminación te tienes que quitar de todo esto. Todo este tipo de webs que hay, ¿no? en internet, ¿no? o la red profunda, ¿no? Es una cosa que hay que acabar con todo ello. Con todos los servidores, con todo lo que hay ahí. Porque todo eso es más que destrucción. La verdad, yo al menos lo veo así y creo que no estoy equivocado, como todos sabéis, ¿no? Por eso creo que tenemos mucho trabajo por delante, ¿no? Tenemos que reformar todo, ¿no? Tenemos que ir siempre por delante, como he dicho, una justicia rápida, ¿no? Y luego una cosa también muy importante es estar todos unidos, ¿no? Todo el bien a nivel mundial, todos unidos para destruir el mal, es lo que tenemos que ser, todos unidos. Estados Unidos y toda la gente de bien que hay en todo el planeta en un mismo proyecto para la destrucción de la oscuridad, de todo lo que, bueno, yo creo que hoy más que nunca creo que sois muy conscientes, ¿no? de todo lo que hay a nuestro alrededor de oscuridad, ¿no? Y por eso hay tanta oscuridad y por eso hay tanto entretenimiento, ¿no? para la criatura de Dios, ¿no? Para que no dedique ese tiempo importante pues a su progreso espiritual, que de eso se trata. No penséis que se trata de otra cosa, se trata justamente para eso mismo, ¿no? Para que no alcancéis vuestras metas, que es una cosa que me gustaría entender cómo habéis olvidado, ¿no? ¿Por qué habéis venido aquí, no? Siempre he dicho que creo que es muy importante, ¿no? El hecho de ser conscientes, ¿no? Del por qué, ¿no? Estoy aquí y cuál es mi misión. Y precisamente la misión de cada uno no es esa, ¿no? No es el tema de drogas, no es el tema del sexo y no es el tema del alcohol. Tenéis que preguntaros el porqué y la razón de por qué existe todo esto. En el momento que seáis conscientes de por qué existe todo este tipo de sustancias, os vais a dar cuenta de que hay un plan que es para la destrucción de la criatura de Dios. Si no creo que sea... Yo ya sabéis que soy el más tonto, ¿no? Y creo que uno cuando empieza a meditar, a pensar y a reflexionar sobre el entorno en el cual uno está, se da cuenta, ¿no? de que todo lo que hay está creado para que llevar a la criatura de Dios a la perdición. Y eso es algo que es muy evidente. Por eso creo que más que nunca hay que empezar a despertar, ¿no? A empezar a buscar soluciones, a buscar cosas y maneras y formas, ¿no? para enmendar todo esto. Y esto tiene que ser todos juntos, unidos, para coger y revertir todo esto y traer ya el reino de mi Padre, que tampoco creo que sea muy difícil, pero sé que hay que hacer todo esto, hay que limpiar, hay que purificar toda la tierra, ¿no? De tanta criatura, ¿no? Que trabaja para la oscuridad, ¿no? Que es tan sencillo como eso, ¿no? Y bueno, creo que más o menos, que el mensaje más o menos queda claro, ¿no, hermanos y hermanas? Ya seguiremos trayendo más a colación este tipo de vídeos. A mí me parece que son muy interesantes, ¿no? Que describen muy a a las claras, ¿no? Cómo se comportan, ¿no? Cómo actúan y se comportan, bueno, como una empresa, pero bueno, una empresa del mal, ¿no? Que es como lo que es y lo que han sido siempre, y hay que pensar, y tenéis que pensar, que todas, dentro de las infraestructuras de los estados, de los países, están llenas de agentes de la oscuridad, que trabajan justamente para inteligencia y para muchas cosas, que es facilitar, ¿no?, la labor de todas estas operaciones, para que no los pillen los buenos, que en este caso somos nosotros, ¿no? Y eso os tiene que quedar muy claro. Por eso siempre la inteligencia ha sido tan importante a lo largo de la vida, ¿no? Dentro de todas las infraestructuras, empresas, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no? Siempre hay que tener la contrainteligencia, porque si no, evidentemente, hay muchos que se desvían, ¿no? Por como tantas operaciones que está viendo ahora, ¿no? De arrestos, ¿no? Y de muchas cosas, ¿no? Porque la gente se desvía, porque es tentada, ¿no? El demonio siempre ha sido, lo que ha hecho a lo largo de la vida ha sido lo mismo: tentar con dinero, con sexo, drogas, lo mismo de siempre. Si al final con nosotros hacen lo mismo, ¿no? Pero bueno, saben que no tienen nada que hacer, ¿no? Pero siempre siguen intentándolo, ¿no? Por eso hay gente que sí, al final empieza con poquitas cosas, ¿no? Un favor por aquí, un favor por allá. Pero una vez que tú vas a entrar en el juego, ya no hay salida. Esa es la tentación, justamente es el punto de inflexión en el cual ya estás perdido, ¿no? Por eso nunca hay que acceder a la tentación, nunca. Nos damos la vuelta, salimos corriendo, que eso es una cosa que me parece de lo más divertido, ¿no? Cuando algún agente por ahí te ofrecen o esto o lo otro, porque es algo que es así. Lo que hay que hacer es salir corriendo. No nos paramos ni a hablar, ni a escuchar, ni nada más. Oye las primeras palabras, ya sabes por dónde va la cosa. Nos damos la vuelta, tomamos nota de la persona y la fichamos, para tener conocimiento de para quién trabaja, que es lo que tenemos que hacer en el día a día. Todos los que estamos en la labor del bien, como todos sabéis. Bueno, hermanos y hermanas, me quedo por aquí. Un abrazo muy fuerte del monasterio de la luz de Nuestra Señora de Fátima.